Hello, everyone. Lets me know where I'm from and what's time you watch this. Relax and get comfortable. Let's dive in.
Where to even begin? I feel so lost, trapped, and emotionally drained that I've come to the difficult decision of reaching out to strangers for perspective. I hope someone can offer some insight, because I'm at my wit's end and don't know how much more I can take. I met my husband in 2021, and he had a 4-year-old daughter from his previous marriage. I, on the other hand, had 2 boys, 7 and 5 at the time. From the moment I met his daughter, I became her only source of stability. She was with me nearly 24/7, and my boys welcomed her without hesitation, treating her as one of their own. When my husband received full custody of her, she moved in with us full-time, and for a while, everything seemed okay. But as time went on, things started to unravel. Initially, the small issues began with her competing for my attention. Whenever my boys would try to talk to me or spend time with me, she would immediately rush to me, distracting me and taking the focus away from them. This created tension between the kids. Then, the accusations began. She would cry and tell my husband that my boys were hitting her or being mean, which would result in him scolding my sons. As the tension grew, we decided to install cameras in the house. What we discovered was eye-opening. She was the one instigating the fights and then blaming my boys. When they would eventually retaliate, she played the victim. At first, my husband struggled to accept that his daughter could be the aggressor. But as she got older, the behavior escalated. In October 2022, when our baby was born, my SD was 6. Around the same time, her bio mom had another baby, so the dynamics became even more complicated. Despite everything, I continued to treat her like one of my own. Her dad worked long hours as a truck driver, so I was the one she relied on, especially since her bio mom was emotionally unstable at the time. One day, when my infant was only a few months old, we were all in the living room. The baby was in her playpen, and my SD was playing nearby. Out of nowhere, the baby let out a terrifying cry. SD looked guilty, denying she did anything, but the cameras revealed the truth. She had tried to suffocate the baby with her blanket and then dropped her on her head. This was the first major incident that caused me to question everything. After talking with her bio mom, I learned that SD had done something similar to her infant sibling, even sticking her finger in the baby's eye and causing an infection. As the months went by, I watched helplessly as my SD repeatedly hurt my baby. As the baby started learning to walk, SD would push her over, causing the baby to hit her head on the floor. I put SD in therapy, hoping it would help her process her emotions, but my anger and frustration continued to build. Everyone seemed to overlook the severity of what was happening, and I felt like I was the only one who saw how dangerous it was. Now, in 2024, SD is 7, and her behavior has only gotten worse. She's disrespectful, ignores boundaries, and does whatever she wants without consequences. Meanwhile, my husband is hardly ever home because of his job, leaving me to handle everything on my own. Things got even worse after we had another baby in May 2024, who was born with a rare heart defect. Just 3 weeks after the baby had open heart surgery, my SD, once again, did something horrible. She jumped off her bunk bed with my 2-year-old in tow, injuring his lip. She lied at first, but eventually admitted the truth. As the weeks passed, my SD's behavior grew more dangerous. We were in the living room one evening, and my baby was lying on her mat on the floor when SD suddenly came over, flipped her onto her chest, and started laughing. That was the breaking point for me. I finally told my husband that I couldn't continue living like this. The tension in the house is unbearable, and my other children are living in a constant state of fear. SD is constantly starting trouble, and nothing ever happens to her. My son has even been injured by her, having his eyelid cut open by a toy car she threw in anger when he wouldn't give her the one she wanted. I'm at a loss. I'm pregnant again and feeling more uncomfortable and miserable in my own home than ever before. I've told my husband how I feel, how I'm considering walking away for the sake of my mental health and the safety of the kids, but he calls me selfish and accuses me of not thinking about him. He refuses to part with his daughter, and while I would never ask him to, I feel like I have no choice but to leave. I'm struggling with so much already, especially after medically retiring from the military due to PTSD and MST. And I don't know how much longer I can be responsible for someone who is actively hurting my children, all while being terrified for the safety of my unborn baby. I'm exhausted, emotionally drained, and stuck in a situation that feels impossible. Thank you to anyone who made it this far. I just don't know what to do anymore.
I've been seeing a counselor for therapy for several months now, and she's been incredibly supportive. I've been struggling with depression, and having someone who listens so attentively and guides me through my journey has been invaluable. Over time, I've grown to admire her not only for her professional expertise, but also for her kind and approachable nature. She's been a great help in navigating the difficult emotions I often face, and I can honestly say that our sessions have been beneficial. I often leave feeling lighter, more self aware, and with practical advice to help me manage my symptoms. However, a recent session left me feeling confused and a little uncertain about how to approach a situation. Typically, my counselor enjoys having a light snack or a cup of tea while we talk, which has never bothered me. It feels like a small, comfortable thing that allows us to ease into the session. The snacks are usually simple, nothing too distracting. I've never been bothered by her having a bite of something small like a cookie, as it never interfered with our conversations. But during one particular session, she did something that caught me completely off guard. She brought a seafood boil. Now, I have nothing against seafood boils. Honestly, I love them. The combination of crab, shrimp, crawfish, and spices is delicious. But there was something about the timing and the situation that threw me off. From the moment she set the bowl down in front of her, the intense smell of spices filled the room. It wasn't just the fragrance, it was the overall sensory experience. The distinct sound of cracking open crab shells, the clattering of utensils, the messiness of the whole thing, all of it made it incredibly hard for me to focus on the conversation. It felt like we were in two completely different worlds, and instead of sitting down to talk about my depression or my progress, it seemed like I was just trying to stay grounded in the moment with all these distractions around me. I found myself struggling to find the words to explain how I was feeling while she was working her way through crab legs and peeling shrimp. It was difficult to concentrate on sharing some of my more vulnerable thoughts when her hands were constantly busy, and I was distracted by the mess and the sounds. We were discussing some pretty sensitive topics related to my mental health, and the contrast between those heavy, emotional discussions and the light, casual nature of her eating made me feel uncomfortable. I want to be clear that I don't have any issue with her eating or snacking during sessions. It's something that's been a part of our routine, and I've never minded it before. I also fully understand that we all need to eat, and that she may have been busy or had a long day, but the timing of the seafood boil just seemed off. It was something that took me completely by surprise. It wasn't just a snack. It was a full, intense dish that required both hands and significant focus. It felt more like we were at a casual dinner rather than in a therapeutic setting. I don't want to seem rude or confrontational. I really value my therapist's guidance, and I don't want this to cause any friction between us. But at the same time, I feel that it's important to address the situation so I can make the most out of these sessions. Therapy is already an emotionally taxing process for me, and I really rely on these sessions to help me through my struggles. I don't want to feel distracted or overwhelmed by something that could be easily avoided. So, I've been wrestling with whether it would be appropriate for me to ask her to avoid eating messy, distracting foods during our sessions. I don't want to make it sound like a big deal, but I feel like it's something that could make a significant difference in how I engage with the therapy. I've thought about it from her perspective too. She's been really supportive and compassionate, and I know this wasn't done intentionally to upset me. I also respect her professionalism and don't want to make her feel uncomfortable, but I just feel like there needs to be a balance. Therapy is meant to help me get out of my head and focus on my well-being, but in that moment, I felt like I couldn't focus on anything but the seafood boil. I've been thinking about how to approach this conversation with her. I want to be as tactful as possible. She has done so much for me, and I don't want to jeopardize our relationship. But at the same time, I don't want to ignore my own needs or continue to feel distracted. In the meantime, I've been feeling conflicted. Should I just let it go? Or would it be unfair to bring up something so seemingly small, but that affected my ability to engage with the therapy? I keep second-guessing myself, unsure whether I'm overreacting. After all, it was just one session, and maybe it won't happen again. But I can't shake the feeling that I need to address it for my own peace of mind.
Am I the asshole for being upset that my sister, 23, refused to attend Thanksgiving because she wanted me to change all the dishes to be vegan, even though she recently became vegan. I am 26 years old, and I'm responsible for handling the big dishes at Thanksgiving this year, such as turkey and mashed potatoes. I delegated smaller tasks like desserts and yams to other family members. My sister, 23, who has recently become vegan, called me 2 days before Thanksgiving and asked if I was planning on making any of the dishes vegan. She assumed that I would already be planning on it because she had served only vegan food at her birthday party, and had also had gluten-free mac and cheese when my brother's celiac girlfriend came. I told my sister that no, I am not planning to change ingredients in any of my dishes to make them vegan. However, there are a lot of dishes that are already vegan anyway, so she is welcome to bring anything vegan if she wants. My sister got really upset and said that I should change all the recipes to accommodate her. Plus, it would be hard for people who are not used to vegan swaps to enjoy the food. She pointed out how many other family members had chosen to make vegan dishes, and asked why I was so rigid in my demands. I told my sister that I understand she wants to be a part of our Thanksgiving celebration, but I'm also concerned about the health and safety of everyone at the table. If we all eat non-vegan foods, it could lead to people with allergies or intolerances having trouble eating, and could also cause other health issues. My sister got even more mad and said that she wouldn't come to Thanksgiving if I didn't accommodate her vegan demands. She hung up the call. Later that day, she went into our family's shared note where everyone signed up to bring a dish, and privately texted all the family members saying I wanted her to let them know to make their dishes vegan. I only found out because my aunt texted me asking if it was fine to use honey in the rolls, and I asked why it wouldn't be. She then showed me the text my sister had sent her about the rolls needing to be vegan. I angrily told my sister not to come to Thanksgiving. She didn't show up. Now, it's a few days past and I feel really bad. I feel like maybe I should have found a better compromise. A lot of my family is saying I should have just accommodated her, so AITA? We had green beans, sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, corn, chips, sourdough bread, and berry pie that was vegan. I feel like this situation has left me feeling confused and upset. It's not clear to me how I should handle this relationship with my sister. Am I being too strict in my demands, or is she being unreasonable? I am 19 years old, and my girlfriend is 28 years old. For context, I recently transferred to a new college, which is located in a country where I am an immigrant. My journey started at a club where we met and began dating about 3 months ago. It is essential to mention that during my upbringing, I had limited exposure to the complexities of mental health. This has been a significant barrier as I was trying my best to understand my girlfriend, who revealed her numerous mental challenges. Despite this challenge, I am committed to our relationship and my love for her. Last weekend, I wanted to take my girlfriend out on a date because I felt guilty and knew that she didn't like being alone. We had a wonderful picnic in a serene farm area, enjoying each other's company and strolling around the beautiful surroundings. However, this encounter turned out to be incredibly emotional and disturbing. The most distressing part of the situation occurred when she noticed a flower I had tucked behind her ear. She abruptly yanked it out of her hair and threw it with great force on the ground. This event left me in shock and confusion. I assumed it was a cute gesture, but what I received instead was an unexpected reaction. The next moment, my girlfriend started screaming about her mother and claimed she had been triggered by something related to flowers. She accused me of intentionally causing the issue and pleaded with me to get away. When I tried to follow her, she ran into her car and drove off, leaving me standing awkwardly and confused. Days have passed without my girlfriend speaking to me. I decided to take a taxi back home, which cost me a significant amount of money. Despite this, I was still left feeling lost and uncertain about the situation. I tried to confront my girlfriend by sending her a long voicemail explaining how she hurt me and how much I loved her. Unfortunately, she ignored these messages for some days. Finally, yesterday, she spoke with me, admitting that I should not be upset because it was my fault for not recognizing that she was in a breakdown and responding appropriately. However, I am still unsure if this explanation is valid, especially since I am new to this situation, and she failed to considerate of my feelings. She never mentioned the flowers, or claimed to have alluded to them before, which leaves me feeling inadequate. This is my first relationship ever, and I had no idea it would come with such emotional turmoil. Am I the asshole? What should I do to address this issue and heal our relationship? My girlfriend's reaction left me feeling frustrated and misunderstood. Despite her attempts to explain herself, I am still not convinced that she is valid or responsible for my distress. She failed to communicate openly about the flowers and my interpretation of them. As a result, I need to take a step back and consider my own role in this situation. Was it appropriate for me to interpret her actions as intentional? Am I being too quick to judge or place blame on her? Moreover, I should seek help from professionals who specialize in mental health issues. A therapist can provide guidance on how to handle the emotional turmoil that is affecting our relationship, and offer ways to improve communication between us. In conclusion, this situation has left me feeling uncertain and anxious about our future together. It is essential to take time to reflect on my actions and behavior during this challenging period. I should seek support from professionals and work towards healing our relationship in a healthy and compassionate way.
Throwaway because I don't want to add more fuel to the fire at home. I know this situation looks bad on the surface, but I genuinely believe there's more nuance here, so please bear with me. I'm a 38-year-old man married to my amazing wife, 39F, for 12 years. We've built a strong, trusting relationship over the years. About 2 years before we got married, we met two women, Lauren, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and Carly, 42 degrees Fahrenheit, who became some of our closest friends. They've been in our lives for 14 years now, and were even bridesmaids at our wedding. These two are practically inseparable. They've lived together all this time, do everything together, and have shared dogs and countless adventures. To clarify, they're straight, have had boyfriends in the past, and their relationship is just a deep, long-term friendship. While we both value Lauren and Carly's friendship, they're more my wife's friends than mine, though I also consider them close friends. They're incredibly social, often inviting us out for dinners or game nights, and we've shared great times over the years. But every now and then, if we hang out with other people or decline an invite, they'll act like we're pushing them aside. These moments blow over quickly, though, and we go back to normal, which is why this recent incident blindsided me. The other person in this story is my best friend, Marg, 38F, whom I've known since grad school. She lives about an hour away, so we only see each other once or twice a month, but we've stayed close. My wife gets along great with Marg. She even helped plan my proposal, and Marg has hung out with Lauren and Carly multiple times without issue. They've all enjoyed wine nights and other get-togethers, and I thought everyone got along fine. Marg and I share a love of wilderness backpacking, and once or twice a year, we plan group camping trips with her friends, guys and girls. My wife doesn't come along. Camping isn't her thing, but she's always been supportive and trusts me completely. This year, we're planning a 5-day trip to Minnesota, Canada, with flights booked, gear packed, and everything set. Marg is staying at our house the night before because we have an early flight. 2 nights ago, we had Lauren and Carly over for margaritas, tacos, and board games. Everything was normal until Lauren suddenly brought up how weird it was that I'm so close to Marg. I calmly said I didn't see anything strange about our friendship, but Lauren doubled down, saying, "Guys and girls shouldn't have such close relationships if they're just friends." I pointed out that our relationship has always been platonic and that my wife has no issues with it. My wife backed me up, saying she fully trusts me and has never doubted my intentions. Carly then chimed in with, "Just because she trusts you doesn't mean it isn't weird," which felt like an unnecessary dig. Before I could respond, Lauren escalated things by saying, "I wouldn't be surprised if something has happened between them in the past." That comment sent me over the edge. I told them, "You two know nothing about healthy relationships. You're so codependent on each other, and that's probably why you're still single at 40. They looked stunned and immediately got up to leave. My wife tried to stop them, but they weren't having it. Now it's been 2 days of silence from Lauren and Carly. My wife is upset with me for causing a rift in the friendship, but admits they crossed a line. She also agrees their closeness can sometimes feel suffocating. I leave for the trip in 3 days, and while I hate leaving my wife to deal with the fallout, this trip has been planned for months, and backing out would inconvenience everyone else involved. So Reddit, am I the asshole for how I handled this? Before diving into the update, I want to address 2 points. First, to those speculating that Carly and Lauren might be bisexual and suggesting I wouldn't understand that, let me clarify. I am bisexual. Their relationship status or orientation isn't the issue here. They're just single, and that's entirely separate from this situation. Second, for those implying that my wife acted out of line, let me be absolutely clear. My wife has stood by me and defended me throughout this nightmare. She has never shown an ounce of distrust, and her actions have been rooted in the stress and manipulation caused by others, not her lack of faith in me. Now, on to the update, and it's a doozy. Those who advised me not to go on my trip were absolutely right that Carly and Lauren would try something, but I could never have imagined the lengths they would go to. To provide context, I've never had any reason to believe that Carly and Lauren harbored any ill will toward me or my wife. They've been close friends for over a decade, stood by us at our wedding, and have always been incredibly supportive. They've helped us in times of need, like taking care of our pets and house when we traveled, and we've shared countless game nights with no hint of malice. I genuinely believed we were all very close. While I was on my winter camping trip, which was extremely remote with limited signal, I had no idea what was unfolding back home. Winter camping is isolating, challenging, and requires full focus on survival, so I was entirely cut off. When we returned from the trip, I discovered 13 texts and 4 missed calls from my wife. The urgency in her messages was palpable. I called her immediately, and what she told me left me in shock. While I was away, Carly and Lauren had come over to our house under the pretense of wanting to apologize and have a wine night with my wife. 2 days before I returned, during their visit, they began bringing up suspicions about me and another woman, Marge. When my wife immediately dismissed their claims and defended me, they asked her if she'd ever gone through my phone or belongings, just to be sure. My wife, who has full access to all my passwords, said no, because she trusts me completely and has never felt the need to check. This is when Carly revealed their so-called evidence. Carly claimed that 2 weeks earlier, while my wife was visiting her family, they had dropped by to bring over some bread they'd made. According to Carly, they saw Marge's car in our driveway during that time. They said they didn't want to bring it up earlier to avoid causing unnecessary issues, but felt they had to mention it now after my supposed defensiveness. Despite this, my wife stood by me and rejected their narrative, calling it baseless. But then Lauren suggested that they check through my belongings for any proof. This was the final straw for my wife. She exploded at them, calling out their immaturity and accusing them of trying to undermine our marriage simply because they hadn't experienced a healthy relationship like ours. She kicked them out, telling them not to come back until they grew up and apologized. When they refused to leave, she had to threaten to call the police. Unfortunately, their accusations planted a tiny seed of doubt in my wife's mind. Feeling overwhelmed by the stress of their visit and the situation, she did something she wouldn't normally do. She looked through my drawers, While she found nothing incriminating in my phone or usual belongings, she came across a piece of lace lingerie hidden in my underwear drawer. It was clearly not hers and wouldn't have fit her. Most people would see this as damning evidence, but my wife, being the intelligent woman I fell in love with, found it suspicious. Why would she stumble upon this right after their accusations? Something didn't add up. Determined to get to the bottom of it, my wife tried calling and texting me to access our security camera footage from the days I was away. I had access to the footage on my phone, so as soon as I was within signal range, I reviewed the footage. What I saw made my stomach churn. On the third day of my trip, the night before Carly and Lauren's confrontation with my wife, Carly was caught on camera entering our house. She had a bag in hand and used the key code we had previously given her for house sitting. She left 5 minutes later, with the bag seemingly empty. I was overcome with rage, pain, and disbelief. I sent the footage to my wife immediately, and she took swift action by changing all our door codes and alarm settings. When I got home, we had a long and emotional conversation. Together, we decided to cut off all contact with Carly and Lauren and to press charges for breaking and entering. We also reached out to a lawyer for guidance on what further legal actions we should take. I apologized to Marge, who had been looped in on this situation, and she was equally furious at Carly and Lauren's behavior. Marge has offered her full support and is helping us ensure our safety. This ordeal has been devastating, but it has solidified the strength of my marriage. My wife and I are a team, and we're moving forward together. This will likely be my last update, but I wanted to thank everyone who offered support and advice. It's been a harrowing experience, but we're determined to come out stronger on the other side.
I, 20 female, am in a tough situation, and I'm not sure if I overreacted, so I need some outside perspectives. I've been with my fiancé, Charles, 35 male, for about 2 years, and everything seemed fine until recently. A few weeks ago, my 14-year-old sister, Amy, came to stay with us for just a few days while our parents were out of town. During her stay, I started noticing some really unsettling things. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but Charles began making comments that made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. He would call her so hot and would say things like, "You're going to turn heads when you're older," and "You've got such a body on you already." The worst part was when he said, "I'd be jealous if I were your boyfriend. Every guy will be looking at you soon." I tried to ignore it at first, but it kept happening, and I began to feel sick to my stomach. Then one evening, I overheard him telling a friend on the phone, "Amy's got that look now. It's like she's starting to bloom." It was honestly one of the creepiest things I've ever heard. I felt like I was losing my mind and just knew that I couldn't stay in that relationship anymore. I confronted Charles about his behavior, and he immediately got defensive. He denied it and said I was being paranoid and that I should trust him. He insisted that he was just being nice and that I was overreacting. I didn't care. I packed my things and broke off the engagement and moved back in with my parents. Now my friends and some family members are telling me that I overreacted. They say that I should have talked it out with him first, but I don't see how that would have changed anything. So, am I the asshole for breaking up with my fiancé because of his creepy comments toward my little sister?
I am 19 years old, and my girlfriend is 28 years old. For context, I recently transferred to a new college and am an immigrant in this country. I met my girlfriend at a club and started dating about 3 months ago. Thing is, I was aware she had many mental complexities and wasn't 100% familiar with this subject matter due to my upbringing, but I was trying hard for her because I knew I loved her. Unfortunately, I haven't had much time to see her lately due to uni assignments and activities, but last weekend, I wanted to take her out on a date because I felt a big guilt and I knew that she didn't like being alone. So, I took her to a really nice farm area for a nice picnic. Afterward, we were having a good time just strolling around, and then I picked up a flower and tucked it behind her ear as what I assumed was a cute gesture. This, however, did not yield the reaction I expected. She started having a total breakdown, like she yanked it out of her hair and threw it really roughly on the ground, and I was freaked out and confused. Maybe she had an allergy or something? But no, she started accusing me of triggering her. And I just didn't get it. She started screaming or whisper screaming about her mom, and I guess she had a flower-related trauma somehow. Then, she started accusing me of doing that on purpose, and she started imploring me to get away. Then she ran and I was trying to go after her, but she got into her car and drove away and just left me there standing awkwardly and confused. Some days have passed with her not speaking to me. I ended up taking a taxi back home. It cost me too much, and I'm still confused. I tried confronting her by sending a long voicemail explaining how she hurt me and how much I loved her, which she ignored for some days. She spoke to me yesterday finally, and told me that I shouldn't be upset, that it was my fault for not recognizing that she was having a breakdown and responding appropriately. But I'm not sure if she is even valid because I'm new to this, and she wasn't considerate of it at all. She never told me about the flowers, and in her text, she claimed to have alluded to it before, but I failed to recall. Which I guess is not good, but I'm not accustomed to being so attentive and careful. She still isn't talking to me properly, and I just don't know what to do. This is my first relationship ever, and I had no idea it would come with so much emotional turmoil. Am I the asshole, and what should I do?
I, 22 female, recently ended my relationship with Matt, 30 man, and it's left me feeling deeply conflicted and questioning whether I made the right decision. Matt and I had been together for just over a year, and for the most part, things seemed fine. I had never really had any concerns until one particular weekend when my best friend, Lily, 21F, came to visit. Lily and I have been inseparable since childhood, and I was excited for her to finally meet Matt, especially since I had talked about her so much. I knew they would get along well, but I wasn't prepared for the chain of events that followed. The weekend started off great. Matt was polite, and Lily was her usual bubbly self, but as the weekend went on, I started to notice some things about Matt's behavior that felt off. At first, I didn't think much of it. Matt has always been a bit of a jokester, so I just assumed that maybe he was trying to be friendly or show off a little. But then, Matt started making comments that left me feeling uneasy. It started when Lily laughed at one of his jokes. He made a comment that seemed like a harmless compliment at first, but something about it didn't sit right with me. He said, "Wow, you've got the kind of laugh that could make anyone fall for you." It didn't seem like a normal compliment to me, especially because it was directed at Lily in front of me. It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off as one of those awkward moments that happens in social settings. But the comments didn't stop there. Later that evening, while we were watching a movie, Matt made another remark that sent a chill down my spine. He said, "If I had met Lily before you, who knows what would have happened?" I tried to laugh it off, but I could feel my stomach tighten. It felt like he was planting the seed for something more than just a joke, almost as if he was implying that if given the chance, he would have chosen Lily over me. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just brushed it off. However, it kept nagging at me throughout the night, and I began to feel more and more uncomfortable. The final straw came the next morning. Lily casually mentioned that she was still single, and Matt, once again trying to be funny, said, "Well, if things don't work out between me and your bestie, give me a call." Both Lily and I awkwardly laughed, but I could tell that something wasn't right. I didn't like the way he was talking about her, especially when he was already in a committed relationship with me. It felt like he was flirting with her, and that's when I started to question what was going on. That night, I decided to confront Matt about his comments. I told him that I didn't think it was appropriate for him to make jokes about Lily in such a way, especially considering how close she and I are. I explained that his comments were making me uncomfortable. To my surprise, he didn't take my concerns seriously. He rolled his eyes and dismissed my feelings, calling me jealous for no reason and telling me I was overreacting. He insisted that it was just banter and that I was being too sensitive. He even accused me of being insecure, which only made me feel worse. It was like he didn't even care how I felt. It hurt because I had expected him to understand and validate my emotions, but instead, he made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. The next morning, while I was in the shower, I received a text from Lily. She told me that Matt had made an inappropriate comment about her body the night before. He had said, "You must get a lot of attention. You've got a killer figure." Lily told me she didn't know how to respond to that, so she just laughed awkwardly. This was the moment that I knew I couldn't continue in the relationship. I had tried to ignore it and hoped that it was just a misunderstanding, but this confirmed that Matt had crossed a line. I felt angry and betrayed by his actions, especially since he had been so dismissive of my feelings. When Lily left, I decided to break up with Matt. I sat him down and told him that I couldn't stay in a relationship where my feelings were being disregarded and where he couldn't respect my boundaries. He was furious. He called me overly dramatic and told me I was throwing away something real over nothing. He didn't seem to grasp why I was so upset, and it felt like he was more concerned about his ego than about the fact that he had disrespected me and my best friend. I tried to explain that I didn't trust him anymore, but he kept deflecting and blaming me for not being more understanding. Now, after the breakup, I feel conflicted. Some of our mutual friends think I overreacted and that I should have given him another chance to explain himself. They feel that I should have talked things through with him before ending the relationship. They think I was too quick to pull the trigger, but I feel like his comments were more than just harmless jokes. To me, trust and respect are crucial in a relationship, and once that trust was broken, I didn't feel like I could stay with him. I've been going over everything in my head, questioning if I could have handled it differently, but a part of me still feels strongly that I made the right decision. I've always been protective of my friends and especially of Lily, and I couldn't stand by and let someone I was dating treat her with such disrespect. I don't know if I overreacted or if I was justified in ending things, but I'm hoping that sharing my story will help me find some clarity. Was I wrong to break up with him instead of trying to work things out? Should I have been more patient and had a longer conversation about my concerns, or did I make the right call by ending the relationship immediately? I'm really unsure of what to think now, and I'd appreciate any advice or perspectives on this.
31 female, am the youngest of 4 sisters, with a significant age gap between us. My oldest sister, Christine, 57 female, is my half-sibling, and our relationship is complex. Although we get along well enough, the age difference has created a dynamic where, despite being a successful adult with a graduate degree, a stable job, a mortgage, and a husband, I often feel dismissed or talked down to by my older sisters. This has been especially apparent in family gatherings, where they focus on themselves, leaving me feeling sidelined. A prime example of this was at my wedding, where despite having all 3 of them in my bridal party, they spent most of the day talking about their own lives, which left some of my other bridesmaids noticing the imbalance. Christine, the eldest, has had a difficult life. She's battled mental health challenges and struggled with alcoholism in the past. About 10 years ago, she went through a crisis that led to a divorce. Christine was a stay-at-home mom during that marriage and has 3 grown children, all of whom are now self-supporting. Fortunately, Christine has been doing much better lately. Her current partner has a high-paying job in the financial sector, and together they bought a home in an expensive area. Throughout her struggles, our father was incredibly supportive. He helped with her mental health counseling and rehabilitation costs, which were substantial. This financial support was a crucial part of her recovery, and I do not think my other sisters are fully aware of how much our father spent on her during that time. I've never mentioned this to them, as I didn't feel it was necessary. When our father passed away at 81, he had very few assets left, aside from his retirement account and a vintage car. In his will, he bequeathed the car, which was valued at around $250,000, to my 38-year-old sister. The retirement account was divided 45-45-10, with the larger portions going to me, 45%, and my other sister, 41 female, and the smaller portion, 10%, going to Christine. My share of the retirement account was worth approximately $250,000, which I plan to invest wisely for the future. My husband and I are both frugal and focused on securing our financial future. Much of this money was set to go into our retirement and investment accounts, as we are planning to start a family soon and want to ensure a stable future for our children. A few weeks after the probate process, I received an email from Christine. In it, she explained that she had discussed the inheritance with our other two sisters and they were willing to consider redistributing our father's assets. She asked if I would be willing to give her some of the money from my portion of the 401k, explaining that she believed Dad didn't understand her financial circumstances when he decided on the distribution of the assets. She felt it wasn't fair to her or her grown children and hoped that I could help rectify the situation. Christine's request caught me off guard. I felt it was inappropriate for her to ask me to go against our father's wishes. I politely declined to discuss it further with her and explained that I did not feel comfortable altering the division of assets. I made it clear to her that I would not undermine our father's decisions, and I hoped she would respect that. After receiving her email, I was contacted separately by my other two sisters, who both seemed to be on the same page as Christine. They made it clear that they thought I should consider redistributing the assets, and that I was being too rigid in sticking to what Dad had decided. I told them the same thing, that I didn't feel it was right to go against Dad's wishes, and that Christine's request had put me in an uncomfortable position. I considered telling them about the financial support Dad had provided to Christine during her struggles, but I ultimately decided against it. I felt it wasn't relevant to the situation and could create unnecessary tension. Despite my efforts to handle the situation delicately, I'm now receiving the cold shoulder from all three of my sisters. They're upset with me for not considering Christine's request more seriously, and they feel I should have at least had a conversation with them about it. I'm starting to wonder if I was wrong for not being more flexible. I understand that Christine may feel that the inheritance wasn't fair, but I also believe that my father had the right to decide how he wanted to divide his assets. The truth is, I've always felt like the outsider in my family. I've worked hard to build a life for myself, but it seems like my sisters don't fully acknowledge my adulthood or my accomplishments. It feels like no matter how much I achieve, I'll always be the youngest sister, and that dynamic often leaves me feeling small. I'm now questioning whether I made the right decision by standing my ground, especially with the cold shoulder I'm receiving from my sisters. I never expected that a request about money would create so much tension, but here we are. I want to honor my father's wishes and preserve my relationship with my sisters, but I'm starting to wonder if it's worth it to keep my boundaries firm, especially when it comes to something as sensitive as inheritance. So, AITA for not considering Christine's request to redistribute the inheritance and for sticking to what my father decided, even though it's causing tension with my sisters? Should I have tried to have a deeper conversation with them, or did I make the right call by refusing to go against Dad's wishes? I'm truly conflicted, and I could use some advice on how to navigate this situation.
I am a 37-year-old woman who originally moved to this city 10 years ago. My goal was simple: better career prospects and financial stability to fund my startup. Like many entrepreneurs, I had to make sacrifices along the way. For a while, nothing went according to plan. I faced rejection and failure, but each setback was a learning experience. I learned how to take on clients, save diligently, and eventually qualify for joint ventures and financing. It wasn't easy, but eventually, I completed the process and started seeing the fruits of my labor. A few years later, I bought my first foreclosed property. This was made possible by the savings I had accumulated from bonuses, alongside careful planning. 4 years later, I acquired my second property. By then, I was financially stable and ready to make this investment. The second property wasn't anything extravagant, but it was a wise decision. I rented it out and used the rent money to build up a solid emergency fund. The income from this second property helped me become even more secure, giving me a sense of independence that I hadn't experienced before. About 2 years ago, I met James, a 35-year-old man who, at the time, seemed to be a perfect fit for me. From the beginning, he was incredibly supportive of my career. I had to travel a lot for work, and he understood. He never once criticized my ambitions, and he always seemed genuinely proud of what I had accomplished. We both had children from previous relationships, and we agreed early on that we wanted to build the best futures possible for them. We worked together as a team, supporting each other, and things were moving smoothly until they weren't. A few months ago, James started asking odd questions. It wasn't anything too alarming at first, just a few sporadic questions about my career. I assumed he was just trying to understand my job better, especially since he didn't come from the same industry. Over time, however, his questions became more frequent and more detailed, which caught me off guard. James had always expressed an interest in starting his own business, but I never thought it would become a point of tension between us. We had several long conversations about our future together. I explained to him that, while I was following my original plan to eventually move back to my home city, I wanted to create a happy balance between my professional life and our relationship. I thought this was a compromise that we could both agree on. But soon after, James told me that he was planning to look for a job in another city, in search of better opportunities. I was supportive of his decision, though a part of me wondered whether it would bring us closer or push us apart. Things started to get uncomfortable when I began inviting him to career events and dinners as my plus one. These were events where people from my industry networked, and everyone typically brought their spouses or someone they trusted. At first, I thought it was a good idea to let him meet the people I work with. It could give him a sense of what I do and the people I interact with. However, over time, James became increasingly invested in my social circle. He started name-dropping to his friends and family, as if he had some claim to the success I had built. This bothered me deeply, but I didn't address it right away. I figured it might just be a phase. The situation only worsened when James began making unfavorable comparisons between me and my colleagues. He complained about how I didn't dress the way certain other women did. It was odd and hurtful, especially since I had always made an effort to stay grounded and focused on my goals. Eventually, I had to stop bringing him to these events. It was just too stressful. I had to ask him to stop asking about my rental income, too, as I was uncomfortable discussing it with him. It wasn't that I wanted to hide things from him, but I didn't feel like he truly understood the boundaries I had set for myself in terms of work and personal life. It didn't help that my car situation also became an issue. I drive an old SUV, not flashy, not luxurious, but functional. I was fine with it. But when we went for a drive one day, James was driving and parked my car farther away than I had wanted. When I asked him to park closer, he told me that my car was embarrassing. It was like a slap in the face. I would never have said anything about his car, even though it wasn't new either. I let him drive my car because his had air conditioning problems, and I didn't think it would be an issue. But hearing him call my car embarrassing made me feel inadequate. Soon after, James asked if I could help him find an investor for the business he wanted to create or if I could personally invest in it. I was taken aback by his request. It wasn't something I had expected, and I needed time to think about it. Eventually, I told him that I couldn't invest in his business. I explained that owning a business is a demanding process, and that he would need a solid understanding of whatever industry he wanted to enter in order to make it valuable to investors. I didn't want to go through the process of finding investment again, especially when I was already closing that chapter in my life. Additionally, I would have to write up his business plan, which would require time away from my own family. It would be a sweat equity deal, which meant I would have to put in long hours without the promise of a quick return. It wasn't something I could commit to, and I made that clear to him. When I told him this, his reaction was not what I expected. He was upset, almost offended, and he seemed to think that I wasn't being supportive enough. It was as though he saw me as a bad girlfriend for not wanting to sacrifice so much of my time to help him. From that point forward, he became more distant. He stopped saying I love you unless I asked him first. That alone was a huge red flag for me. He also said that he wanted a helpful woman by his side, implying that I wasn't living up to that expectation. I tried to explain that I simply couldn't ask my colleagues or contacts for money for his business, and he implied that my unwillingness to ask was a sign of insecurity or a lack of respect in my professional relationships. That argument left me feeling hurt and frustrated. A week later, James made a joke about cheating. I didn't find it funny at all. He brushed it off and didn't apologize, which left me feeling even more disconnected from him. I thought we were supposed to be a team, but his behavior was starting to make me feel as though I wasn't valued or respected. Then, 2 nights before Thanksgiving, I planned a trip to a Christmas-themed park to spend time with him before I went to see my family. I thought it would be a nice, romantic gesture, but it quickly turned awkward. James didn't want to hold my hand. At first, he held it for a few minutes, but then he pulled away. When I tried to reach for it again, he laughed it off and called me corny. He put his hands inside his jacket, making it clear that he wasn't interested in being affectionate. When I tried to kiss him in the car, he turned away. This behavior was completely out of character for him. It felt like a change I couldn't ignore. That night, I felt humiliated. I went home feeling dejected and heartbroken. It made me wonder if everything we had shared over the past 2 years had been a lie. I wasn't sure anymore if I was even valued in the relationship. In a moment of frustration and pain, I made a decision that I now regret. I changed all the locks on my doors, gathered up the few things James had left at my house, and dropped them off at his place. I didn't answer his calls when he tried to reach me, and I broke up with him through text. Now, I'm spending the weekend with my family, trying to regain some clarity. James has been calling non-stop, leaving frantic and confused voicemails, but I'm standing firm in my decision to stay broken up. I can't shake the feeling of rejection and embarrassment, and I'm not sure if I want to revisit this relationship.
I'm a 26-year-old woman from Vermont, and my relationship with my father has always been complicated. He's emotionally immature and often distant, and his struggle with alcohol and drugs has only deepened the divide between us. Growing up, my father didn't drink until after my parents' divorce when I was 15. His addiction began with drugs, after he suffered a severe injury, and it spiraled from there. I had to move out while I was still in high school because the chaos of living with him was too much to handle. His outbursts when high were a daily occurrence, and I couldn't keep living in that environment. Despite the distance, I still visited him sometimes, hoping things would improve. But I never lived with him again. About 5 years ago, my father married Judy, a woman from his small hometown. She has a controversial reputation and had been married several times before, with 5 kids from different fathers, not to mention grandkids. They tied the knot without informing any of the family members, and I never even met her before the wedding. The whole thing felt off, and over time, I came to believe that my father was being taken advantage of. Judy has nothing of her own, no car, no steady job, and she's often living paycheck to paycheck. She's been using him to support her lifestyle. Their home has become a chaotic, unhealthy environment, largely because of their alcohol-fueled nights and the constant drama Judy and her family bring. My childhood home, which once held memories of more peaceful times, is now in disarray. There are always people coming and going, Judy's kids and extended family members who can't support themselves. The house is filthy, and the atmosphere is overwhelming. To make matters worse, they tried to have Judy's children move in with them, but it only led to more chaos. These kids stole from my family, wrecked cars, and generally caused trouble. It became clear to me that I couldn't live there anymore. A year ago, after some major changes in my life, I found myself back living at my father's place temporarily, while I searched for an affordable apartment. I had no other option at the time. I tried to make it work, but I had to retreat to my room, isolating myself from the madness around me. The constant noise, the drinking, and the overall instability were too much to handle. Judy would often unload her personal traumas on me, which left me feeling uncomfortable and emotionally drained. The whole situation was exacerbated by Judy's drug-addicted children, whose felony charges and toxic behavior made everything worse. At night, her family would shoot guns outside, making it impossible to get any rest. After a few months, I couldn't take it anymore and began couch surfing with friends. Whenever I had the chance, I'd house sit for people, which gave me temporary refuge from the chaos. Despite all of this, I managed to start a new job. My general manager turned out to be someone who had bought a house right next to my father's place. After talking to her, I found out that the noise was so bad that she was actually considering talking to me about it. This was the last straw for me, so I tried to address the issue with my father. I asked him to tone it down, but his reaction was hostile. He posted something on Facebook about how out-of-state corporations, which isn't true, were attacking Vermont culture, specifically the right to shoot guns. It was frustrating and disrespectful. But the real breaking point came when I returned to the house one day to collect some of my belongings. When I walked into my old room, I was horrified to find that Judy and her kids had ransacked it. They had stolen $400 in cash, a jar full of change, my favorite bong, clothes, and several sentimental items. They mixed everything in with their stuff, likely to take it to whatever place they were staying. There were also drug paraphernalia and signs that they had been using my room as a space to get high. It felt like a total violation. When I confronted them, Judy said nothing, and her daughter denied everything. My dad didn't seem to care, only acknowledging that Judy's kids were the worst. It was clear to me that he didn't care about what had happened. This was when I realized that he wasn't going to change and that he was protecting Judy and her family over his own daughter. I had always been willing to overlook their lifestyle choices, but this was the final straw. I couldn't ignore the way I was treated any longer. After this incident, I made the decision to cut contact with my father. I couldn't stand to be in a relationship where I was constantly violated and disrespected. I've since changed the locks on my room, and I haven't spoken to him since. I'm currently staying with family for the weekend, and my dad has been blowing up my phone with calls and messages, but I'm done. I feel embarrassed and hurt by his rejection of me and his blatant disregard for my boundaries. Am I wrong for cutting ties with my father after everything that's happened?
I'm 38 years old, and I've been through something that has changed my life forever. 4 years ago, my wife Emily passed away after a long battle with cancer. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, and honestly, I'm still not over it. We were together for 15 years, and she was my everything. When she passed, a piece of me went with her. I've never been the same, and I don't think I'll ever fully recover. The grief was so overwhelming, I didn't know how to move forward. But somehow I did. One of the few things that kept me grounded was Emily's wedding ring. After she passed, I kept it safe in a little jewelry box on my dresser, tucked away where only I knew it was. That ring symbolized everything she and I had shared, every moment we spent together. It was a token of our love, our life, and the promise we made to each other. I didn't care that it wasn't valuable in a financial sense. Its worth to me was beyond any price. It was irreplaceable. Fast forward to the present, and my sister Claire, who is 41, has a 17-year-old daughter, Maddie. Maddie recently got engaged, and of course I was shocked when I heard the news. I know it's not uncommon for young couples to marry, but 17 just seems so young to me. I told Claire that I thought Maddie might be rushing into things and that maybe she should take more time before making such a big decision. But that's not the real issue here. The issue came to light only recently, and it's been eating me up inside. A few weeks ago, I noticed that Emily's wedding ring was missing. I immediately panicked, thinking I had misplaced it somehow, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. I searched everywhere, retraced my steps, but there was no sign of it. I didn't want to accuse anyone without any proof, but my gut told me something was wrong. I had this sinking feeling that someone had taken it. Then, last weekend, during Maddie's engagement party, I saw something that sent my heart into my throat. There she was, Maddie, proudly wearing the very ring that had belonged to Emily. My world seemed to stop in that moment. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I knew I had to confront Claire about it, so I waited for a private moment to pull her aside. I asked her, "Why does Maddie have Emily's ring?" Claire tried to brush it off, acting like it was no big deal. She told me that Maddie had fallen in love with the ring. When she saw it once, and that Claire thought I wouldn't mind since I wasn't using it anymore. Are you kidding me? I was absolutely livid. I didn't hold back. I told her in no uncertain terms that I wanted the ring back immediately or I would call the police. Claire got defensive, saying I was being selfish and ruining Maddie's big moment. Couldn't believe my ears. The ring wasn't just some piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of everything I had with Emily. It meant more to me than anything in the world, and now it was being treated like some trinket to pass around. Claire was minimizing the situation, and that's when I completely lost it. I told her I was giving her 1 week to return the ring, or I would file a police report. It wasn't about the money or the ring itself. It was about the principle and the respect for what it represented. Now, the entire family is involved. Some people are on my side, agreeing that Claire overstepped and that I had every right to demand the ring back. But others think I'm overreacting, claiming it's just a ring, and that Maddie is just a kid who didn't know better. I can't wrap my head around this. How can anyone think that just because Maddie is young, she doesn't need to understand the significance of this? My parents have gotten involved, too, urging me to let it go for the sake of peace and harmony. They don't get it. It's not about the ring. It's about the principle, the loss, the respect for Emily's memory. Maddie is crying, Claire is calling me a monster, and the whole family is pressuring me to let it go. I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I really the one in the wrong here? I don't care about the peace. I care about what's right. I've been through so much grief already, and now I'm being told to ignore the one thing that still connects me to my wife's memory? I've told Claire that if she doesn't return the ring within the week, I will be filing a police report. Now everyone is calling me dramatic, and they're threatening to cut me off if I go through with it. But how can I let this go? This is not just some material item. It's a piece of my past, my heart, my life with Emily. I feel like I'm being torn apart by the people I thought I could trust. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let this go?